Welcome to Rose Squad Reviews. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a slight change in the... Kay got this for me for Christmas. It's a Ruby poster. You can see Blake and Yang, but then Weiss and Ruby are up there and you can't really see them, but that's okay. We're doing a little bit of a collab video today. This is going to be potentially part one, but also maybe we'll just kind of do the whole thing in like a giant segment. I don't know.
We'll see how this goes.
Yeah. We don't really have
and you'll know eventually.
Yeah.
We'll know eventually
You'll know by
too.
the time that this gets posted, so by the time this is pertinent to any of you, it'll happen. We're gonna do a little bit of a recommendation video. We're gonna go over a couple different genres, and then we're also going to include some movies, books, and anime that you might not know about. So, see how this goes.
So the first category I'm going to talk about today is the action genre. Now, this genre is kind of notorious for sacrificing plot for action. I don't consider those good movies. So the movie I've chose today is Miss Congeniality. I think it's a pretty underrated film. It's very original. It's not as much of a traditional action where things are blown up every 2-3 minutes. Large amounts of structural damage. Not as much that, but there is some action in it, and it is a very funny movie. Highly recommend to basically anyone. The book I want to talk about is the Homelander series by Andrew Cullivan. The first book is entitled The Last Thing I Remember. This series is amazing. It has a lot to do with patriotism and terrorism, so if that's interesting to you, you will probably like the book. And it also has a lot of action, but it never sacrifices the plot or character development for the sake of the action. And then for anime, I know this one is fairly well known, but I would recommend Hunter x Hunter. It's a long-running shonen, but it's not like the big three or the big four if you include Fairy Tail now. That's a debate that I don't want to get into. It has a lot of different arcs, so if you don't like one part, that doesn't mean you won't like all of it. Has a lot of action, fairly fun and lighthearted for the most part. The next category is sci-fi, and for sci-fi, the movie I would recommend is The Iron Giant. Now, this is an older animated movie, but I have to say it is still one of the best sci-fi movies I have ever seen. For the book, I would recommend The Lab by Jack Heath. It is book one in a series. It is set in a dystopian future. What else do I say about it? It's amazing.
Yeah. It kind of fits also a little bit into like the action genre as well. Just to kind of give you a little bit more of some background. The world has flooded, and pretty much the only place that hasn't been flooded is this giant city that's probably somewhere around Australia. And most of the world, or the city, what's left of it, has been taken over by this organization called, I think it's like Chaosonic. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but yeah. And so your main character works to kind of undermine them. He's with like a sort of a vigilante group and just kind of jazz.
I like action and sci-fi stuff, and she doesn't like as much as me, but she still liked the book, so yeah. Reasons.
I drew you fan art for the books.
Yes, I remember. Also, the author, I believe he's a stunt driver, so he knows what he's talking about in the books. Like, it's pretty intense.
And he wrote it when he was like 16. He was really young.
16 or 14.
Yeah.
Young, but
they're good.
They're good. Okay, we've got one. We're just rambling.
That's okay.
Okay, for the anime recommendation, I recommend Psycho-Pass. I cannot recommend this enough. If you've read my review or watched my review, you probably know this. I have to say, well, a lot of it is based on the work by Philip K. Dick, and he's kind of known as the sci-fi author, where a lot of his books have been turned into movies, Blade Runner, A Scanner Darkly, Minority Report, they're all based off of his works, and movies like Inception take inspiration from his work. And so this is kind of another reiteration of this. It's set in a future where a computer system decides how likely a criminal is to commit crime, and that law enforcement will dole out punishments based on that system. The next genre is cop and procedural shows. Now this has a mix of fiction and nonfiction. So to start us off, the TV show I would recommend is Forensic Files. This is going to be the only TV show that I know of at this point that is 100% legit science, because it's based off of actual cases. So it talks about what science was used and how that helped in prosecuting the case and tracking down the killer or whatever crime it was that was committed. My cousin, who is a forensic chemistry major, it's the only one she'll watch. I don't know how that proves anything. I'll put that out.
She approves. So instead of a book for this one, I decided to do a manga. My first manga, some of you know this, was Library Wars, and so I mean it's sort of like a mixture of like romance and action, but then it also has a lot of like kind of the cop procedural part of it, because this defense organization is fighting to keep books from being censored, and so there's like copy stuff. It's good.
Alright, and for the anime, I'm choosing Case Closed. Now, this is one of the longest running shows. As in, over 1,000 episodes. I think we recently crossed the 2,000 mark? Maybe that happened a while ago. Anyway, there's tons and tons of episodes. You don't really need to watch them in order. You can do what you want, and your main character was a detective who solved crimes in high school. The main character gets essentially put into the body of a grade schooler and must solve crimes that way. It is geared more towards younger audiences, I would say more around middle school, but it is complex enough that I don't think you can be bored watching it for the most part.
So after all that action, science fiction, and cop procedural, you might be feeling like, oh, I just want something a little bit relaxing, a little bit lighter. So we're going to be talking about like sort of what we call like the FeelGood movies and stuff, but just, you know, something you watch to kind of relax. Now that I think about it, we could have put Fruits Basket on here, but that's okay. We've already talked about Fruits Basket a lot.
Like you said, don't put Fruits Basket.
I know.
Everyone knows that.
Yes, that's why we didn't put Fruits Basket on.
So if you don't know Fruits Basket, first fix that.
So instead of Fruits Basket for the anime, I thought of Sakura Quest. This is one that I finished recently, and I do plan on doing a review eventually. Yeah, that's probably going to show up in a couple months, given my record, but
maybe a few years.
I just really enjoyed it, and it wasn't like really tense or stressful, but it kind of kept a consistent plot throughout, and it just was enjoyable to watch, which is the whole point. Okay. For movies, we couldn't really think of a specific one. We kind of searched for Google, and we're like, feel good movies, and we couldn't figure out one.
Through.
No, not really. So we're just gonna be like, Disney. It's kind of a general, yeah.
Like, not necessarily anything owned by Disney Studios, but like Disney
The classics,
movies.
guys.
Okay.
The animated, yeah.
We're not saying
No.
Avengers is a feel-good movie. Alright.
And then, for the book, I would suggest Smile by Raina Telgemeier. I don't know how to pronounce her name, I'm sorry. I will put it in, like, the words at the bottom of the thing. The caption. So y'all can figure it out. Yeah. But that's the book that I always read whenever I'm like, oh, I'm tired, I just want to read, like, a book that's relaxing and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I can always pick it up and enjoy it no matter how many times that I've read it. And it's like a graphic novel, so it also kind of makes it go fast, and I really like her art style as well. So sports was kind of another one that we didn't really know about. We couldn't really think of a book, so we haven't really read a whole lot of sports books, so sorry about that. But for the movie, we thought of McFarland, because we both really enjoyed that, because I was a cross-country manager. And
I ran cross-country and managed cross-country.
Yeah. So it kind of holds a special place in our hearts, and
it's a real cross-country movie. Like, that's
Yeah.
what cross-country is actually like. There's been a few movies that kind of glorify it.
It's not supposed to be cool.
But it was a great movie.
Yeah. Kind of takes the story of the underdog, and then it's just good. Yeah.
So to be fair, I haven't actually watched the snacks recommendations, so if I horribly messed something up, or I'm sorry. I've heard that Hajime no Ippo is a very good anime to watch. It is about a middle schooler who's being bullied, and so he decides to join the boxing team. That's about the extent of my knowledge to it, but I've heard it's very good and a very sweet one to watch or read. It is older, 80s and 90s. Recently it's been revamped, so I mean, give it a shot. Tell me what you think. I'm going in blind.
So we hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any suggestions for us, such as what sports books people should read, feel free to let us know in the comments below. Also, if you checked out any of our recommendations, please do, by the way. Let us know if you enjoyed them, or I guess you can let us know if you didn't, but we hope you enjoy them, and so that's why we're recommending them. So this concludes part 1 of the video. Please join us for part 2 whenever I get that up. When I do, I'll try and put a link somewhere so you can just kind of go bloop bloop. Yeah, so be looking for that.